The scent of bleach burned my nostrils as I scrubbed harder at the stubborn stain on the marble floor. 3 hours into my shift at the Belmore Hotel, and my knees already ached from kneeling on the hard surface. 6 more hours to go. I adjusted my uniform, stiff, gray, and 2 sizes too big, and pushed a strand of hair back under my cap. "Elena, room 412 needs turn-down service. Now." Mrs. Patel, the head housekeeper, barked from the doorway of the presidential suite I was cleaning. "Yes, ma'am." "I'll finish this first," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Did I ask what you'll finish first?" "Room 412. Now," I nodded, gathered my cleaning supplies with trembling hands, and hurried past her, keeping my eyes fixed on the plush carpet. 6 months at this job, and I still couldn't meet her gaze without feeling like I might crumble. The weight of my life pressed down on me as I pushed my cart toward the elevator. 25 years old with a nursing degree that meant nothing here, 8,000 miles from home. The promises of a better life in America had dissolved like sugar in rain. Now all that remained was survival. For me, and for my 4-year-old daughter, Sophia, waiting at Mrs. Diaz's apartment until my shift ended at midnight. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, revealing a world I only cleaned but never belonged to. A couple stepped out, the woman draped in diamonds that caught the light. The man's watch probably worth more than what I'd earn in a year. They walked past me as if I were invisible, the woman's perfume lingering in the air, jasmine and something exclusive I couldn't name. I slipped inside the elevator, pressed the button for the 4th floor, and caught my reflection in the mirrored wall. Pale face, dark circles under my eyes, chapped lips. I barely recognized myself anymore. Back home in the Philippines, I'd been Elena Santos, top of my class, full of dreams. Here, I was just Elena, the maid, invisible until needed, disposable when inconvenient. The elevator stopped at the 2nd floor, and a man stepped in. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in an impeccable charcoal suit that fit him like it had been sculpted onto his body. The scent of his cologne, sandalwood and leather, instantly overpowered the chemical smell of my cleaning supplies. I pressed myself against the corner of the elevator, making myself smaller. From the corner of my eye, I noticed his Italian leather shoes, so polished I could almost see my reflection in them. My gaze traveled upward, past the perfectly tailored pants to his hands. Strong, with long fingers adorned only by a single gold signet ring. A businessman, I thought. Another person who wouldn't see me. But then, I felt it. His eyes on me. Not just the casual glance people give when sharing an elevator, but a deliberate, assessing look that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I kept my gaze fixed on my cart, counting the seconds until I could escape this sudden, inexplicable tension. 4th floor? His voice was deep, with the barest hint of an accent I couldn't place. Italian, maybe. I nodded, still not looking up. "You missed a button," he said. Finally, I looked up, confused. His eyes met mine, dark as midnight, intense, and somehow both cold and burning at once. His face was all sharp angles and perfect symmetry, framed by black hair with subtle hints of silver at the temples. He was older than I'd initially thought, maybe late 30s, with lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested he rarely smiled. "Your uniform," he clarified, gesturing to my collar where, indeed, I'd missed a button in my haste to report to Mrs. Patel this morning. Heat rushed to my face as I fumbled to fix it, dropping my spray bottle in the process. It clattered to the floor between us. We both reached for it at the same time, his hand closing over mine as we touched the bottle. A jolt of something, fear, awareness, shot through me. His hand was warm, the skin unexpectedly soft except for calluses I wouldn't expect on a businessman. He straightened, handing me the bottle, his expression unreadable. "Careful," he said, though whether he meant with the bottle or something else entirely, I wasn't sure. The elevator doors opened at the 4th floor, and I mumbled a thank you as I pushed my cart out, feeling his eyes on my back until the doors closed behind me. Room 412 was at the end of the hallway. I knocked, called out housekeeping, and waited. No response. I used my key card, entering cautiously. "Hello?" "Housekeeping," I called again, stepping into the suite. The room was in disarray, clothes strewn about, empty bottles on the coffee table, the bed unmade. The guest must have gone out for the evening. I began working quickly, gathering trash, changing sheets, wiping surfaces. As I moved toward the bathroom, the door to the suite opened. My heart jumped to my throat. A man stumbled in, not the one from the elevator, but younger, with bloodshot eyes and an unsteady gait that suggested he'd had too much to drink. Well, he slurred, looking me up and down in a way that made my skin crawl. Didn't expect company. I'm just finishing the turn-down service, sir, I said, keeping my voice professional as I moved toward my cart, putting distance between us. No rush, he said, blocking my path to the door. What's your name, sweetheart? I need to move on to other rooms, sir, I replied, avoiding his question and the reek of alcohol on his breath. He moved closer. Come on, don't be like that. I'm just being friendly. His hand reached out, fingers brushing against my arm. I flinched away. Please, sir. I'll get in trouble. I won't tell if you won't, he said, his smile turning predatory as he cornered me against the wall. I'll even make it worth your while. Pretty girl like you could use some extra cash, right? Panic rose in my chest, my thoughts racing to Sophia, to what would happen to her if I lost this job. I needed to defuse this, to escape without making a scene. Mrs. Patel had made it clear that guest complaints meant immediate termination, no questions asked. Sir, please. The door to the suite opened again, and we both turned. Relief washed over me as I saw another hotel employee, until I realized it wasn't housekeeping or security, but a room service waiter with a tray. The waiter froze, taking in the scene. Room service for Mr. Collins, he announced, his voice uncertain. The drunk man, Mr. Collins, apparently, sighed in annoyance and stepped away from me. Put it over there, he instructed the waiter, gesturing to the desk by the window. I seized the opportunity, grabbing my cart and moving quickly toward the door. But as I passed Mr. Collins, his hand shot out, gripping my wrist painfully. We're not finished, he whispered, low enough that the waiter couldn't hear. I yanked my arm free and hurried out, heart pounding, tears threatening to spill. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. This wasn't the first time. It wouldn't be the last. Sometimes I wondered if invisibility might be preferable to this kind of visibility. I had 5 more rooms to service before my dinner break. 5 more rooms where anything could happen, where I was always vulnerable. I pushed my cart toward the next door, wishing I could just disappear. By 11:30 that night, every muscle in my body screamed for rest. I'd managed to avoid Mr. Collins for the remainder of my shift, taking the service elevators and ducking into storage closets whenever I spotted him in the hallways. Mrs. Patel had assigned me to clean the restaurant after closing, a task that meant I might not make it to Mrs. Diaz's to pick up Sophia before midnight. I was on my hands and knees, wiping down the baseboards in the restaurant's private dining room when the door opened behind me. We're closed, I said automatically, not looking up. I know, the voice, deep, accented, sent a shiver down my spine. The man from the elevator. I stood quickly, wincing as my knees protested the sudden movement. He stood in the doorway, jacket removed, tie loosened, but somehow looking even more imposing than he had earlier. Behind him, I glimpsed 2 broad-shouldered men in dark suits waiting in the hallway. Bodyguards? Was he someone important? May I help you, sir? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. He studied me for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. You're still here, he observed. Late shift? I nodded, confused by his interest. Until midnight, sir. He glanced at his watch. Platinum, I guessed, worth more than my yearly salary. It's nearly midnight now. Yes, sir. I'm just finishing up. I gestured to the baseboards, aware of how small and insignificant my work must seem to someone like him. What happened to your wrist? He asked suddenly, his gaze fixed on the bruise forming where Mr. Collins had grabbed me. I instinctively covered it with my other hand. Nothing, sir. Just bumped into something. His eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't press. Instead, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a business card, placing it on the table between us. My name is Alessio Russo, he said. I'm staying in the penthouse suite for the next few weeks. If you ever need anything at all, you call that number. I stared at the card, baffled. It was simple, elegant, just his name and a phone number, no company or title. "Why would you?" I began, but stopped myself. Questioning guess wasn't my place. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Let's just say I notice things others don't, Elena." My heart stuttered. I hadn't told him my name. He must have read it off my name tag. Yet something in the way he said it made it sound like he'd known it all along. "I should finish my work, Mr. Russo," I said, unable to hold his intense gaze any longer. He nodded once, then turned to leave. At the doorway, he paused. "The world is full of predators, Elena. Some are obvious. Others hide in plain sight." His eyes flicked to my bruised wrist again. "Be careful who you trust." With that cryptic warning, he was gone, leaving behind only the lingering scent of his cologne and the business card on the table. I picked it up with trembling fingers, turning it over. On the back, handwritten in elegant script, were the words, "If anyone ever troubles you again, tell me." I slipped the card into my pocket, unsure whether I felt protected or threatened. Something told me Alessio Russo was a dangerous man to know, but perhaps an even more dangerous man to cross. By the time I finished my shift and clocked out, it was 12:20. I hurried through the employee exit, anxious about picking up Sophia so late. Mrs. Diaz was understanding but had her own early morning to contend with. The night air was cool against my skin as I walked briskly toward the bus stop, my uniform hidden beneath my worn jacket. The streets were quiet in this part of the city, too upscale for much nightlife, too residential for much crime. Still, I clutched my pepper spray in my pocket, eyes darting to shadows and alleyways as I walked. I was halfway to the bus stop when I heard footsteps behind me, heavy, deliberate, too close. Before I could turn, a voice slurred in my ear. "Found you. Mr. Collins." My blood turned to ice as his hand clamped onto my shoulder, spinning me around. "Thought you could avoid me all night?" His breath reeked of whiskey, his eyes unfocused but determined. "That wasn't very nice of you." "Please," I said, stepping backward, calculating the distance to the main street where there might be witnesses. "I need to go. My daughter is waiting." His eyebrows shot up. "A kid, huh? Single mom?" He grinned, the expression vulgar on his flushed face. "I like single moms. They know how to be grateful." I pulled the pepper spray from my pocket, but he was faster than I expected. His hand closed around my wrist, the same one he'd bruised earlier, and squeezed until I gasped in pain, dropping the canister. "Now that wasn't nice either," he said, his voice hardening as he backed me against the brick wall of a closed boutique. I opened my mouth to scream, but his other hand clamped over my lips, smothering the sound. Panic exploded in my chest. Sophia. Who would take care of Sophia if something happened to me? As I struggled, a black SUV with tinted windows turned the corner, its headlights illuminating us against the wall. Mr. Collins didn't seem to notice, too focused on his disgusting intentions. The SUV slowed, then stopped. The rear door opened, and a familiar figure stepped out, Alessio Russo, his expression coldly furious as he took in the scene before him. "I believe the lady told you no," he said, his voice quiet, but carrying an edge that cut through the night air. Mr. Collins turned, his hand still gripping my wrist. "Mind your own business, pal," he spat. Two men emerged from the SUV, the same bodyguards I'd seen earlier. They flanked Alessio, their posture suggesting they were ready for violence. Alessio ignored them, his focus entirely on Mr. Collins. "Let her go." Each word was precise, measured, deadly. Something in his tone, or perhaps the presence of the bodyguards, penetrated Mr. Collins's alcohol-addled brain. He released me, raising his hands in a placating gesture. "Hey, no problem, just a misunderstanding," he said, backing away. "Is that right?" Alessio's gaze shifted to me. "Was this a misunderstanding, Elena?" I rubbed my wrist, too shaken to speak. My silence was answer enough. Alessio nodded to his men. One of them moved forward, grabbing Mr. Collins by the collar and pushing him against the wall where I'd been trapped moments before. "Remember my face," Alessio said, stepping closer to Mr. Collins. "Remember this moment, because if I ever hear you've so much as looked at another woman without her consent, what happens next will make your worst nightmares seem like a mercy." Mr. Collins paled, the blood draining from his face as he seemed to finally understand the kind of man he was dealing with. Who are you?" he stammered. Alessio smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. "Someone who protects what's his." His gaze flicked to me briefly, possessively, before returning to Mr. Collins. "Now get out of my sight." The bodyguard released him, and Mr. Collins stumbled away, nearly running in his haste to escape. I stood frozen, uncertain whether to be grateful for the rescue or terrified by the casual display of power and the proprietary way Alessio had referred to me. What did he mean? What's his? I wasn't his. I wasn't anyone's. "You're shaking," Alessio observed, stepping closer but maintaining enough distance not to crowd me. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, finding my voice at last. "No. Thank you for stopping him." I glanced nervously at the bodyguards, who had retreated to a respectful distance but were clearly still watching. "How did you find me?" "I noticed him following you out of the hotel," Alessio said simply. I didn't like the look in his eyes. A chill ran through me at the realization he'd been watching me, noticing details I'd missed in my exhaustion. "You mentioned a daughter," he continued. "She's waiting for you?" The reminder of Sophia snapped me back to reality. "Yes. At my neighbor's. I'm already late." "We'll drive you," he said, not a request but a statement of fact. He gestured to the idling SUV. Every instinct screamed that getting into a car with this man and his armed guards was dangerous. Yet Mr. Collins was still out there somewhere, possibly angry enough to try again, and the buses ran infrequently this late at night. "I don't even know who you are," I said, hesitating. "Not really." Something like respect flickered in his dark eyes. "Smart girl," he murmured. "I told you. My name is Alessio Russo. I'm a businessman with interests in this city. And tonight, I'm your ride home, if you'll accept." It wasn't much of an explanation, but the alternative was risking another encounter with Mr. Collins, or spending an hour on night buses. "Okay," I said finally. "Thank you." Alessio nodded, satisfied, and guided me to the SUV with a light touch at the small of my back. Proprietary, but somehow not invasive. As I slid into the luxurious leather interior, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made a deal with the devil. But as the car pulled away from the curb, Sophia's face filled my mind. For her, I'd dance with devils if I had to. For her, I'd do anything. What I didn't know then was just how high the price of Alessio Russo's protection would be, or how willingly I would ultimately pay it. The interior of Alessio's SUV enveloped me in luxury I'd only ever cleaned around, never experienced. Soft leather seats, the subtle glow of ambient lighting, and a privacy partition separating us from the driver and one of the guards. The second guard sat across from us, his expression impassive, his presence a silent reminder that this wasn't a normal ride home. "Your address?" Alessio asked, his voice breaking the silence. I hesitated before giving him Mrs. Diaz's location first. "I need to pick up my daughter," he nodded, relaying the information through an intercom. The SUV moved smoothly through the nighttime streets, a world away from the jolting bus rides I was accustomed to. "How old is your daughter?" he asked, surprising me with what seemed like genuine interest. "Sophia is 4, I answered, the knot in my chest loosening slightly at the thought of her. Dark curls and gap-toothed smile, the center of my universe. "And her father?" The question was direct, intrusive even, but something in his tone made it impossible to evade. "Not in the picture," I said simply, unwilling to share the full, painful story with a stranger, no matter how expensive his suit or how timely his rescue. Alessio studied me, those midnight eyes seeming to peel away my defenses layer by layer. "You're not American," he stated, rather than asked. "Filipino. I came here 2 years ago. For work?" I nodded, looking out the window at the passing city lights. "For opportunity." "And did you find it?" There was something knowing in his question, almost mocking, as if he already understood the bitter answer. I met his gaze directly for the first time. I found survival. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, perhaps, or recognition. He reached inside his jacket and produced a thick envelope. offering it to me. "What's this?" I asked, not reaching for it. "Consider it compensation for your trouble tonight." My spine stiffened. "I don't need charity, Mr. Russo." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Not charity, Elena. I value dignity too much to offer charity. This is compensation for the distress my fellow hotel guest caused you. Had the hotel's security done their job properly, you wouldn't have been in that situation." When I still hesitated, he added, "If not for yourself, then for Sophia." At the mention of my daughter's name, so casual, so deliberate, I felt a chill. It was both a reminder and a subtle threat. He knew I had someone depending on me, someone whose needs might override my pride. Reluctantly, I took the envelope, not opening it, but tucking it into my bag. "Thank you," I said stiffly. The SUV stopped outside Mrs. Diaz's modest apartment building, a stark contrast to the luxury vehicle. Before I could reach for the door handle, Alessio's guard was outside, opening it for me. "Wait here," Alessio instructed. "We'll take you home after you collect Sophia." I wanted to protest, to insist I could manage on my own from here, but the firmness in his voice brooked no argument. Instead, I nodded and hurried into the building, aware of his eyes on my back until I disappeared inside. Mrs. Diaz opened her door on the second knock, her kind face creased with worry. "Elena, I was getting concerned. I'm so sorry," I began, but she waved away my apologies. "Sophia's sleeping on my couch. Poor little angel tried so hard to stay awake for you." She glanced past me toward the street where the black SUV was visible through the lobby windows. "Is everything okay? That's not your usual ride." I forced a smile. "Everything's fine. Just a colleague offered a lift since it's late." She didn't look convinced but didn't press. "Let me get Sophia's things." Moments later, I was carrying my sleeping daughter, her small body warm against my chest, her breath soft against my neck. As always, holding her centered me, reminding me why every sacrifice was worth it. When I emerged from the building, Alessio himself stood beside the open SUV door, his eyes fixed on Sophia, an unreadable expression crossing his face. "She looks like you," he said softly as I approached. "Everyone says that," I replied, carefully maneuvering into the vehicle without waking her. Once we were settled, Sophia still sleeping soundly in my arms, I gave him my actual address, a small apartment in a neighborhood that had seen better days, where the rent was just barely within my means. The contrast between Alessio's world and mine would become even more stark when he saw where I lived, but I was beyond caring about appearances. All that mattered was getting Sophia home and into her bed. We rode in silence for several minutes, the hum of the engine and Sophia's gentle breathing the only sounds. Finally, Alessio spoke, his voice low so as not to wake her. "The man who assaulted you, do you know who he is?" I shook my head. "Just a guest. Mr. Collins, according to room service." "And has this happened before, with him or others?" The question hung in the air between us. I thought of the countless small indignities, the propositions, the accidental touches from guests who saw the uniform and thought it gave them permission. "Sometimes," I admitted, "it comes with the job." His jaw tightened, a muscle ticking beneath the skin. "It shouldn't." I almost laughed at the naivety of his statement. This man who clearly had never been powerless a day in his life, who couldn't comprehend the compromises people like me made daily just to survive. "Many things shouldn't be, Mr. Russo. Yet they are." He turned to look out the window, and for a moment, I glimpsed something unexpected in his reflection. Not anger or pity, but a deep, cold calculation. "Not for much longer," he murmured, so quietly I wasn't sure I was meant to hear it. The SUV pulled up outside my apartment building. Peeling paint, security door with a broken lock, graffiti partially covering the faded building number. I felt a flush of embarrassment as Alessio took in my surroundings, but his expression revealed nothing. "Thank you for the ride," I said, preparing to exit. "Wait." He reached into his pocket and produced another business card, identical to the one he'd given me earlier, which was still in my uniform pocket. "My personal number is on the back. If you need anything at all, you call me, day or night." I took the card, too tired to argue. Why are you doing this, Mr. Russo? You don't know me. He studied me for a long moment, his gaze moving from my face to Sophia's sleeping form and back again. Let's just say I recognize value when I see it, Elena. People like Collins. They look at you and see someone they can use and discard. I see something else entirely. And what's that? I asked, unable to keep the skepticism from my voice. The corner of his mouth lifted in a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. Potential. Before I could question him further, he nodded to his guard, who opened my door. Get some rest, Elena. I have a feeling our paths will cross again soon. It wasn't until I was safely inside my apartment, Sophia tucked into her small bed in the corner of our studio, that I finally opened the envelope Alessio had given me. My hands trembled as I counted out the bills. $5,000, more money than I'd ever held at once. Attached was a handwritten note in the same elegant script from the business card. For Sophia's future, no strings attached, but I knew better. With men like Alessio Russo, there were always strings. I just couldn't see them yet. The next morning, I awoke to Sophia's small hands patting my cheeks. Mama, hungry, she announced, her eyes still heavy with sleep. I pulled her into a hug, breathing in her sweet scent, the reality of last night's encounter feeling dreamlike in the pale morning light filtering through our thin curtains. Let's make breakfast, sunshine, I said, pushing away thoughts of Alessio Russo and his mysterious interest in us. After settling Sophia with cereal and sliced bananas, I checked my phone. One missed call from Mrs. Patel at the hotel. My stomach dropped as I listened to her terse voicemail. Elena, don't come in today. Management needs to see you at 2 p.m. Don't be late. My hands went cold. Being called to management could only mean one thing: termination. Had Mr. Collins complained about me before Alessio intercepted him? Would they even let me explain? As if summoned by my anxiety, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The meeting at 2 is nothing to worry about. A.R. Alessio. How did he know about the meeting? More importantly, how had he gotten my personal number? The sense of violation was immediately overshadowed by a more pressing concern. What did he mean? There was nothing to worry about. What had he done? I tried to put it from my mind as I spent the morning with Sophia, treasuring these rare hours together, before I had to drop her at the subsidized daycare I could barely afford. At precisely 2 p.m., and I sat outside the hotel manager's office, hands clasped tightly in my lap to keep them from shaking. My uniform felt suddenly too tight, the collar choking me as I waited to hear my fate. Ms. Santos? The manager's assistant beckoned me inside. I expected to see Mrs. Patel and perhaps the HR director. Instead, I found myself facing Mr. Belmore himself, the hotel's owner, a man whose photograph hung in the staff room but who rarely visited in person. Please sit down, he said, indicating the chair across from his desk. I perched on the edge of the seat, heart thundering in my ears. Sir, if this is about what happened with the guest in room 412, he held up his hand, stopping me. This is about your future with the Belmore Hotel, Ms. Santos, or rather, your lack of one. My stomach plummeted. You see, he continued, shuffling papers on his desk. It appears the hotel has been acquired by a new owner. All staff contracts are being reviewed. I blinked, struggling to process this unexpected turn. I don't understand. Am I being terminated? No, Ms. Santos. You're being promoted. Block 3. Promoted? The word felt foreign on my tongue, as impossible as snow in summer. I don't understand. Mr. Belmore looked uncomfortable, tugging at his collar as if it had suddenly tightened. The new ownership has specifically requested that you be reassigned to the executive floor as personal attendant to the penthouse suite. The penthouse. Alessio Russo's suite. My mind raced, connecting the dots. The text message. His cryptic words last night. He'd been planning this. Who purchased the hotel? I asked, already knowing the answer. A private investment group, Mr. Belmore replied vaguely. Novo Enterprises. They've acquired several properties in the city recently. The name meant nothing to me, but I didn't need corporate records to understand what had happened. Somehow, overnight, Alessio Russo had bought an entire hotel, and now he was positioning me exactly where he wanted me. The position comes with a significant salary increase, Mr. Belmore continued, sliding a document across the desk. Triple your current pay, plus benefits. Healthcare, paid leave, educational assistance. My eyes widened as I scanned the contract. The salary figure made my heart stutter. Enough to move Sophia and me to a better apartment. Enough to start saving for her education. Enough to finally breathe. Why me? I asked, looking up from the paper. Mr. Belmore shrugged. I'm just the messenger, Ms. Santos. The new ownership was quite insistent. You begin tomorrow. Report directly to the penthouse at 9 a.m. As I left the office, contract clutched in my hand, I felt lightheaded. The fluorescent lights of the hallway seemed too bright, the air too thin. This wasn't luck or coincidence. This was calculation. But to what end? Outside, I checked my phone, finding another text from the unknown number. Congratulations on your promotion. A car will pick you up tomorrow at 8:30 AR. My fingers hovered over the screen, tempted to demand answers, to reject this orchestration of my life without my consent. But then I thought of Sophia, of the healthcare benefits that would cover her asthma treatments, of the educational assistance that might one day help me reclaim my nursing career. For her, I could swallow my pride. For her, I could step into whatever game Alessio Russo was playing, but I would do so with my eyes wide open. That night, after tucking Sophia into bed, I finally opened the business card Alessio had given me and dialed the number written on the back. He answered on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting. Elena. My name and his accent sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. Mr. Russo, I began, keeping my voice low so as not to wake Sophia. I think we need to talk about what happened today. Your promotion? I thought you'd be pleased. Did you buy the Belmore Hotel just to give me a raise? I asked bluntly. His soft chuckle traveled through the phone. The Belmore was already on my acquisition list. The timing was fortuitous. And my new position? Assigned to your suite specifically? I value loyalty and competence, Elena. You possess both. I merely created an opportunity for those qualities to be properly rewarded. I closed my eyes, gathering my courage. What do you want from me, Mr. Russo? Really? The line went silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped an octave, intimate and somehow dangerous. Your trust, for now. The rest will come in time. Trust is earned, I countered, not purchased with hotel acquisitions and job contracts. Indeed. I could hear the smile in his voice, as if my defiance pleased him. Then consider this the beginning of that process. I'll see you tomorrow, Elena. The call ended before I could respond, leaving me staring at my phone in frustration. He'd revealed nothing while managing to make me feel even more entangled in whatever web he was weaving. The following morning, a sleek black car, not the SUV from before but equally luxurious, was waiting outside my building at exactly 8:30. The driver, different from Alessio's guards but carrying the same air of vigilant professionalism, opened the door for me without a word. I'd spent extra time on my appearance that morning, applying light makeup and pulling my hair into a neat bun. My uniform, the new one delivered to my door at 7 a.m. in a garment bag, was tailored perfectly to my measurements. The dark blue material was softer, more expensive than the standard hotel uniforms, with subtle gold piping at the collar and cuffs. How had he known my size? I didn't want to contemplate the answer. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the Belmore, accessible only by private elevator with keycard access. The doors opened directly into a foyer of marble and crystal, the morning sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. Good morning, Elena. Alessio stood by the windows, his back to me, dressed in a crisp white shirt and tailored trousers. No jacket or tie yet, an intimacy of dress that felt calculated to put me at ease while reminding me I was entering his private space. Mr. Russo, I replied, hands clasped before me, shoulders straight. Professional, detached, as if this were any other assignment. He turned, and I was struck again by the intensity of his gaze, the way his dark eyes seemed to strip away pretense, to see beneath surfaces to the truth beneath. How is Sophia today? He asked, catching me off guard with the personal question. She's well, thank you, at daycare. He nodded. moving toward a dining table where breakfast was laid out. Pastries, fruit, coffee. Will you join me? We should discuss your duties. It wasn't really a request, but I hesitated anyway, the boundary between employer and employee already blurring uncomfortably. I'm here to work, Mr. Russo, not to dine with you. A flash of amusement crossed his features. Indulge me, Elena. Please. He pulled out a chair, waiting. Reluctantly, I sat, perched on the edge of the seat as he took the chair adjacent to mine rather than across the table, close enough that I could smell his cologne and see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw. Coffee? He offered, already pouring a cup before I could respond. I accepted it silently, watching as he selected a pastry for himself with the casual grace of a man accustomed to luxury. Your duties will be straightforward, he began. All business now. You'll manage this suite and my personal needs while I'm in residence. Scheduling, correspondence, some light cooking, perhaps, though I often dine out. You'll be my point of contact with hotel services. A personal assistant, not a maid, I observed, his lips curved slightly. A personal attendant, as your contract states. The distinction allows for flexibility in your responsibilities. I sipped my coffee to hide my discomfort with that ambiguity. And when you're not in residence, I travel frequently between here, New York, and Italy. When I'm away, you'll maintain the suite and be on call should I need to arrange anything remotely. It sounded simple enough on the surface, but I wasn't naive. Men like Alessio Russo didn't orchestrate elaborate employment scenarios for simple housekeeping services. And the real reason you wanted me in this position? I asked directly. He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded newspaper clipping, sliding it across the table. I opened it cautiously. It was a small article dated 3 years ago from a local Philippine newspaper, a report on a hospital corruption scandal. My breath caught as I recognized a name in the text, Dr. Gabriel Reyes, Sophia's father, and my former fiancé. How did you— I make it my business to know who works for me, Alessio interrupted smoothly. Dr. Reyes embezzled nearly $2 million from the hospital where you both worked, then disappeared, leaving you to face accusations of complicity. Charges that were eventually dropped for lack of evidence, but not before your reputation was destroyed. Am I correct so far? My hands trembled as I folded the clipping, memories flooding back. The humiliation, the betrayal, the desperate flight to America with what little savings I had left, and a 1-year-old daughter to protect. Why are you bringing this up? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Because I know what it's like to be betrayed by those you trust, he said, his tone softer now, almost gentle. And I know the lengths one will go to protect family afterward. I looked up, meeting his gaze. You still haven't answered my question. What do you want from me? He leaned back, regarding me thoughtfully. Loyalty, as I said, but also information. You've worked at the Belmore for 6 months, moving invisibly among the guests, hearing and seeing things others wouldn't notice. You want me to spy for you? I asked incredulously. I want you to be my eyes and ears in situations where I cannot be present, he corrected. The Belmore hosts many important people, politicians, businessmen, competitors. Information is power, Elena. The pieces were falling into place. That's why you bought the hotel. It's not about hospitality. It's about intelligence gathering. A smile touched his lips, genuine this time with a hint of approval. You're perceptive. Yes. The Belmore is strategically valuable to me for reasons beyond its revenue potential. And if I refuse to be part of this? His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened slightly. The salary, the benefits, the opportunities for Sophia, all would remain. I don't coerce Elena, I incentivize, but we both knew the truth beneath his words. The generosity could vanish as quickly as it had appeared. The safety net he'd woven beneath Sophia and me could be withdrawn with a single phone call. I won't do anything illegal, I said finally. A weak line in the sand, but the only one I felt able to draw. I wouldn't ask you to. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine briefly before withdrawing. Think of it as an extension of your observational skills. You've been watching, listening, filing away details about the hotel's guests for months. Now you'll simply share those observations with me. Put that way, it seemed almost innocuous, a natural extension of work I was already doing. But I wasn't fooled. Whatever game Alessio Russo was playing, it was dangerous. And he was drawing me into it one subtle step at a time. "Start with Mr. Collins," he said, his tone hardening at the name. "Tell me everything you know about him, his full name, his purpose at the hotel, his associates." I hesitated, then responded carefully. "Robert Collins. Checking in about a week ago, scheduled for a 2-week stay. He's with a technology company. I've seen him meeting with other businessmen in the restaurant. That's all I know." Alessio nodded, seemingly satisfied with this small test of my cooperation. "You've made a good start, Elena. We'll build from here." As he rose from the table, indicating our breakfast meeting was concluded, I couldn't shake the sensation that I'd just taken the first step down a path from which there would be no easy return. What I didn't yet understand was how deeply Alessio's interest in Collins went, or how that interest would soon pull me into a world of shadows I'd never imagined existed beneath the polished surface of the Belmore Hotel. 3 weeks into my new position, life had taken on a rhythm both comforting and unsettling. Each morning the car would arrive precisely at 8:30. By 9:00 I would be in the penthouse, preparing Alessio's coffee exactly as he preferred it. Strong, black, with a hint of cardamom that reminded him, he'd once mentioned, of his mother's kitchen in Sicily. In those quiet morning moments before he emerged from his bedroom, I would organize his schedule, respond to emails from his business associates, always under his direction, and prepare the suite for whatever meetings he had planned. The work itself was easier than housekeeping. No scrubbing floors on my knees, no heavy lifting, but mentally exhausting in different ways. Alessio demanded perfection in everything. A misplaced document, a scheduling error, a coffee served at the wrong temperature, all would earn his cold displeasure, a flash of irritation quickly controlled but unmistakable. Yet when I performed to his standards, which was most of the time, his approval was equally evident, a lingering look, a slight nod, occasionally a "well done, Elena," that shouldn't have pleased me as much as it did. Sophia noticed the changes immediately. Our new apartment in a safer neighborhood, new clothes, fresh food instead of the cheapest options. More significantly, she noticed my changed schedule, home by 6 most evenings, with weekends free. Time together that had been almost unimaginable before. "Are you happy, Mama?" she asked one evening as I tucked her into her new bed, in her own room for the first time in her life. "Yes, sunshine," I answered, brushing dark curls from her forehead. "Are you happy?" She nodded solemnly. "I like Mr. Alessio's pictures." My hand froze. "What pictures, Sophia?" "The ones he sends with the presents." My blood ran cold. "What presents?" Sophia scrambled out of bed, darting to her small bookshelf where she pulled out a children's book I didn't recognize. A beautifully illustrated story about a little girl who loved the stars. Inside the cover was a handwritten note. "For Sophia, who I'm told is as bright as any star. A.R." "The nice lady at daycare gives them to me," Sophia explained, climbing back into bed. "She says they're from your boss." I forced a smile, tucking her in again while my mind raced. "That was kind of him. Good night, sunshine." After she fell asleep, I examined the book more carefully. It was expensive, a first edition. Inside were 2 more I hadn't seen before, equally valuable, each with a personal inscription from Alessio. Gifts for my daughter. Without my knowledge or permission, my hands shook as I dialed his number. "Is everything all right?" he answered immediately, concern evident in his voice. "You've been sending gifts to my daughter," I said without preamble, keeping my voice low but unable to disguise my anger. A pause. "I assumed the daycare would inform you." "They didn't. And even if they had, you should have asked me first." "You're right," he conceded, surprising me. I apologize for overstepping. His easy admission deflated some of my anger, leaving confusion in its wake. "Why are you doing this, Alessio?" I'd begun using his first name in private conversations, another small intimacy I'd allowed without fully acknowledging it. "Your daughter deserves beautiful things, Elena. Books that will feed her mind, toys that will spark her imagination. That's not your decision to make. No, he agreed. But it is within my power to provide. There's a difference. I sank onto the edge of my bed, suddenly exhausted. I don't understand what you want from us. His voice softened, taking on that dangerous intimacy that always made my pulse quicken. I want to take care of you both. Is that so difficult to comprehend? Yes, I whispered. Because people don't just do that. Not without expecting something in return. Perhaps I'm not most people, but he was. In the weeks I'd worked for him, I'd observed enough to know Alessio Russo was a man who calculated every move, who viewed the world as a complex chessboard where each piece, each person, had a specific value and function. Nothing was ever given freely. No more gifts without my permission, I said firmly. As you wish. He paused, then added, I'll see you tomorrow, Elena. Sleep well. I ended the call, still unsettled by his interest in Sofia. Whatever game Alessio was playing, I couldn't allow my daughter to become a pawn in it. The next morning, I arrived at the penthouse to find Alessio already awake and dressed, speaking rapidly in Italian on his phone. He acknowledged me with a nod, but continued his conversation, pacing by the windows. From his tense posture and clipped tone, I could tell something was wrong. In recent weeks, I'd become adept at reading his moods, a necessary skill for anticipating his needs and avoiding his rare but intimidating displays of temper. I prepared his coffee and set out the brioche I'd picked up from the bakery he favored, then discreetly began organizing the day's schedule on my tablet. He ended his call with a harsh capisco occupatine and set his phone down with controlled precision that spoke of barely contained fury. Is everything all right? I echoed his words from the previous night. He glanced at me, his expression smoothing into neutral territory. A minor business complication. Nothing for you to worry about. But there was something in his eyes, a coldness that made me shiver despite the penthouse's perfect temperature. Your coffee, I said, sliding the cup toward him. He took it, our fingers brushing in the exchange, a small contact that shouldn't have sent electricity up my arm, but did. These moments of accidental touch had been increasing lately, each one leaving me more confused about the boundaries between us. We have a dinner tonight, he said, after taking a sip. The mayor and several city council members. I'll need you to stay late to assist. I nodded, already mentally rearranging my schedule, calculating when I'd need to call Mrs. Diaz to watch Sofia. Of course. How many guests? 8 total. The private dining room has been reserved. I'll send you the details. As I noted this in my calendar, I felt his eyes on me, studying me with that penetrating gaze that always made me feel exposed, as if he could see through my carefully constructed professional facade to the uncertainty beneath. That dress I had delivered last month. The blue one. Wear it tonight. I looked up, startled. I'm not sure that would be appropriate for staff. A smile ghosted across his lips. You won't be serving, Elena. You'll be seated at my right hand as my personal assistant. The dress is appropriate for that role. My stomach tightened with anxiety. This was new territory, being presented not as service staff, but as someone with proximity to his power, someone important to Alessio Russo. I don't understand. Why do you want me at the table? He set down his coffee, approaching where I stood by the dining table. Too close, as always, invading my personal space with that casual dominance that seemed as natural to him as breathing, because you see things others miss. You hear what isn't said. His voice dropped lower. And because having you beside me will remind our guests that I value loyalty above all else. There it was again. That word. Loyalty. As if he'd already claimed mine. As if the transaction had been completed without my awareness. Is Robert Collins attending? I asked, remembering his specific interest in the man who had assaulted me. Something dangerous flashed in Alessio's eyes. No. Mr. Collins is no longer a guest at this hotel. Or any hotel in this city. The implication hung in the air between us. I hadn't seen Collins since that night. Hadn't heard his name mentioned by any of the staff. It was as if he'd simply vanished, checked out without a trace. What did you do? I whispered, both afraid of and needing the answer. Alessio's expression remained impassive. I protected what's mine. There it was again. that proprietary claim that should have offended me, but instead sent a confusing mix of fear and something darker, more primal, coursing through me. "I'm not yours," I said, the words coming out less forcefully than I'd intended. He reached out, his fingers lightly tracing the line of my jaw in a touch so unexpected I froze rather than pulled away. "Aren't you, Elena? You live in an apartment I provide, earn a salary I pay, drive in cars I send, wear clothes I select." His hand dropped away, but the ghost of his touch remained. "The trappings of ownership are already in place. Only your acknowledgement is missing." I stepped back, needing distance from his overwhelming presence. "I can leave any time. Find another job, another apartment." "Of course you can," he agreed, but the confidence in his tone suggested he believed otherwise. "You're not a prisoner, Elena. You're an investment." The word stung, reducing what I'd begun to think of as a complex relationship to a cold financial calculation. "Is that all I am to you? An asset?" Something softened in his expression. "No. Not anymore." Before I could process what he meant, his phone rang again. He checked the screen, then answered with a curt, "Russo," walking toward his office and closing the door, leaving me alone with my confusion and the lingering sensation of his touch on my skin. That evening, I stood before the mirror in my apartment, barely recognizing the woman reflected back. The blue dress Alessio had sent was elegant but understated. Midnight blue silk that draped perfectly across my body, revealing nothing inappropriate but suggesting everything. My hair, usually constrained in a practical bun, fell in soft waves around my shoulders. The minimal makeup I'd applied emphasized my eyes, making them appear larger, more luminous. I looked like a woman who belonged at Alessio Russo's side. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. Sophia watched me from the doorway, eyes wide with wonder. "You look like a princess, Mama," I smiled, kneeling to her level. "Thank you, sunshine. You be good for Mrs. Diaz tonight, okay? Mama has to work late." She nodded solemnly. "With Mr. Alessio?" "Yes, with Mr. Alessio." I hesitated, then asked, "How do you feel about him, Sophia? About the books he sends?" She considered this with the serious contemplation only a 4-year-old can muster. "He gives nice things, but sometimes his pictures look sad." "His pictures?" I asked, confused. "In the books. His writing looks sad." She shrugged, the observation already fading from her mind as she spotted her favorite stuffed animal on my bed. Out of the mouths of babes, I thought. Even Sophia could sense there was something wounded beneath Alessio's powerful exterior, something that all his money and influence couldn't heal. The car arrived precisely on time, as always. The driver, Marco, one of Alessio's personal security team whom I'd come to know over the weeks, gave an appreciative nod as he opened the door for me. "You look beautiful, Ms. Santos," he said, the rare compliment from the usually taciturn man catching me off guard. "Thank you, Marco." As we drove toward the hotel, I tried to calm my nerves. This dinner was clearly important to Alessio, and he wanted me there for a reason, not just as window dressing, but as an active participant in whatever game he was playing with the city's power brokers. The private dining room was transformed when I arrived. Soft lighting, extravagant floral arrangements, crystal and silver gleaming on the perfectly set table. Alessio stood talking with 2 men in expensive suits, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. When he spotted me, he excused himself and crossed the room with purposeful strides. "Elena." The way he said my name, like a caress and a claim all at once, made my heart skip. His eyes traveled over me, appreciation evident in his gaze. "Perfect." "I'm nervous," I admitted, keeping my voice low. "I don't know how to act in this setting." His hand settled at the small of my back, warm through the silk of my dress. "Be yourself. Observe. Listen. Say little unless directly addressed." His lips curved slightly. "And stay close to me." The guests began arriving shortly after. The mayor, 2 council members, the city's police commissioner, and 3 men Alessio introduced as business associates. I noted how each person's demeanor changed subtly when they entered Alessio's orbit. Backs straightening, smiles becoming more fixed, eyes more calculating. They feared him, I realized. Or at the very least, they were wary of his power. Throughout dinner, I did as Alessio instructed. observing, listening, saying little. I noticed the glances between the mayor and one of the business associates whenever development projects were mentioned. I caught the slight tremor in the police commissioner's hand when Alessio casually inquired about recent enforcement actions against organized crime. And I felt, with increasing certainty, that I was sitting among men who operated in a world of shadows, deals made off the record, favors exchanged, threats veiled in polite conversation. A world Alessio navigated with the ease of long familiarity. Halfway through the meal, the conversation turned to recent business acquisitions in the city. One of the council members mentioned the Belmore's change in ownership. "A surprising move, Russo," he commented, swirling his wine. "Hospitality isn't usually your area of interest." Alessio's hand moved to rest on the back of my chair, his fingers just brushing my exposed shoulder. "I go where I find value worth protecting," he replied, his eyes meeting mine briefly. The gesture and words were not lost on the other guests. Speculative glances passed between them, reassessments being made about my role and importance. It was then I realized with perfect clarity, Alessio wasn't just showing me off as an assistant. He was declaring me as something more significant, something worth his personal protection and public acknowledgement. The question remained, why me? What had he seen in a Filipina hotel maid that warranted such elevation? And what would be the price of this new status I'd neither sought nor agreed to? As the evening progressed, the answer began to take shape in the deferential way the men addressed me, in the calculating looks from the mayor's aide, in the subtle ways Alessio kept me at the center of his orbit. I wasn't just an investment to Alessio Russo. I was becoming a statement, a declaration of his power and his priorities, and somewhere between the main course and dessert, I realized with a mixture of terror and exhilaration that I had crossed a threshold from which there would be no return. Whatever web Alessio had been weaving around me was now complete. I was caught. And the most frightening part was that I no longer knew if I wanted to escape. The dinner concluded just before midnight, the guests departing with handshakes for Alessio and respectful nods for me, acknowledgement of a status I still didn't fully understand. As the door closed behind the last visitor, I exhaled slowly, feeling the tension drain from my shoulders. "You did well," Alessio said, loosening his tie as he returned to where I stood by the table. "Better than I expected." "What exactly did I do?" I asked, slipping off the heels that had been pinching my feet for hours. He poured 2 glasses of wine, offering one to me. "You observed, you learned. Tell me what you saw." I accepted the glass, understanding this was both a test and an opportunity. The mayor is taking bribes from Empire Development Group for the waterfront project. The police commissioner is under pressure from someone, not you, based on his reaction when you spoke to him. And the council member with the silver tie is sleeping with his aide. Alessio's eyes gleamed with approval. "Very good. Anything else?" I hesitated, then added, "They're all afraid of you, but not because of your money. It's something else." "What else?" he prompted, his voice soft but insistent. "Power of a different kind, the kind that doesn't come from wealth or position." I met his gaze directly. "Who are you really, Alessio?" He considered me for a long moment, then gestured to the balcony doors. "Walk with me." The night air was cool on my skin as we stepped outside. The city sprawled below us, a tapestry of lights and shadows. Alessio stood close beside me at the railing, his presence both comforting and unsettling. "My family has operated in this city for 3 generations," he began, his voice taking on a distant quality. "We began in Sicily, but America offered opportunities. My grandfather built a network of influence. My father expanded it. I inherited their legacy." "You're talking about the Mafia," I said quietly, the pieces finally clicking into place. He didn't deny it. "We prefer family business." The term Mafia has unfortunate Hollywood connotations. The revelation should have terrified me, sent me running for the elevator. Instead, I felt an odd sense of clarity, as if the final piece of a puzzle had slotted into place. The bodyguards, the deference of powerful men, the way Alessio could make people disappear with a word. It all made sense now. "Why tell me this?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. "Why trust me with something that could destroy you?" He turned to face me, his eyes reflecting the city lights. Because you've earned that trust, Elena. Because I've watched you for weeks now. Your loyalty to Sophia, your discretion with what you've seen and heard in my service, your quick mind and quicker instincts. His hand found mine on the railing, covering it gently. And because if we are to move forward, there can be no significant secrets between us. Move forward, I echoed, my pulse quickening. What does that mean? It means I want you by my side, Elena, not just as my employee, but as my partner. The word hung in the air between us, heavy with implications. Your partner? I repeated carefully. In business? A smile touched his lips. In everything. I withdrew my hand from beneath his, needing space to think. You barely know me. I know everything that matters, he countered. I know you sacrificed everything to protect your daughter from her father's crimes. I know you work with unwavering dedication. I know you notice details others miss. I know you're loyal to those who earn your trust. His voice dropped lower. And I know there's a fire inside you that life has tried to smother but couldn't extinguish. His words resonated in places I'd kept locked away, the ambitious young nurse I'd once been, the woman who had dreamed of more than survival. The part of me that had been slowly awakening these past weeks in Alessio's orbit. And what would this partnership entail? I asked, buying time as emotions warred within me. Attraction, fear, ambition, caution. Officially, you would become my executive assistant, overseeing my personal staff and certain business interests. Unofficially, he paused. You would be my confidant, my counsel, my eyes and ears in places I cannot always be. And Sophia? His expression softened at my daughter's name. Sophia would want for nothing: education at the finest schools, security, a future limited only by her talents and desires. It sounded like a dream: financial security, meaningful work, protection for Sophia, yet beneath the offer lurked shadows I couldn't ignore. Your business, your family business, it involves illegal activities, I said, forcing myself to confront the reality. Some aspects operate in gray areas, he acknowledged. But my focus has been legitimizing our interests. The hotels, real estate, import companies, these are all legal enterprises. And the other enterprises? Would I be involved in those? He shook his head. I would never ask you to cross lines you're unwilling to cross, Elena. Your role would be entirely legitimate. But we both knew the truth. Once you entered Alessio's world, the lines between legitimate and illegitimate blurred. I would be tainted by association, even if my own hands remained clean. Why me? I asked again, returning to the question that had haunted me since that first night. Of all the people in your world, why choose someone like me? Alessio was quiet for a moment, looking out over the city. When he spoke, his voice carried a vulnerability I'd never heard before. Because you see me, Elena, not just Alessio Russo, the businessman or the heir to a powerful family. You see the man beneath. He turned to me, his expression stripped of its usual careful control. From that first moment in the elevator, when you looked at me, really looked at me, I knew you were different. I remembered that moment, his intense gaze, the unexpected connection. I had seen something in his eyes then. A fleeting glimpse of loneliness that mirrored my own. I need someone I can trust absolutely, he continued. Someone intelligent enough to understand the complexities of my world, but untainted by its corruption. Someone with the strength to stand beside me, not behind me. His hand reached up, fingers brushing my cheek with surprising gentleness. I believe that person is you, Elena. His touch sparked something in me. Desire, yes, but also a dangerous hope that perhaps this impossible offer was real. That perhaps I could step from shadows into light, bringing Sophia with me. I need time, I said finally. This isn't a decision I can make tonight. He nodded, accepting this without argument. Of course. Take the weekend to consider. On Monday, give me your answer. His hand dropped away from my face. Whatever you decide, Elena, know that Sophia's future is secure. The educational fund I established for her remains hers, regardless. The knowledge that he had already created a fund for my daughter, without telling me, without using it as leverage, stirred emotions I wasn't prepared to examine. Thank you, I managed, suddenly overwhelmed by the evening's revelations and the choice before me. Alessio called for his driver to take me home, and we descended to the lobby in silence, the weight of unspoken words filling the elevator. As we crossed the marble expanse toward the entrance, he placed his hand at the small of my back, a gesture that had become familiar over the weeks, proprietary yet protective. Outside, Marco held the car door open, his expression professionally neutral despite the late hour. Alessio walked me to the car, then surprised me by taking my hand and raising it to his lips. A courtly gesture at odds with the modern world, yet somehow fitting for a man who operated by his own rules. "Until Monday, Elena," he said, releasing my hand slowly. I nodded, unable to form words as I slid into the back seat, feeling the imprint of his lips on my skin all the way home. The weekend passed in a blur of consideration and consultation. I spent hours watching Sofia play in our new apartment, thinking about the future I wanted for her versus the one Alessio offered. I made lists of pros and cons, scenarios and contingencies. I paced the floors at night, weighing risk against reward, safety against danger. By Sunday evening, I had made my decision, one based not just on logic or fear, but on the truths I had come to understand about myself and about Alessio. Monday morning dawned clear and bright. I dressed with particular care in a simple but elegant dress I'd purchased with my new salary, applied light makeup, and arranged my hair loosely around my shoulders. Sofia noticed the difference immediately. "You look pretty, Mama. Are you going to see Mr. Alessio?" I smiled, kneeling to her level. "Yes, sunshine. I'm going to talk to Mr. Alessio about our future." Her small face grew serious. "Will we stay here? I like my room." "That's what we're going to decide," I said, smoothing her curls. "But whatever happens, we'll be together. That's what matters most." The car arrived precisely at 8:30, as always. Marco opened the door with his usual efficiency, but added a small nod of encouragement. Had Alessio shared his proposal with his security team, or had they simply observed enough to draw their own conclusions? The ride to the Belmore seemed both too long and too short. I rehearsed my decision, the words I would use, the boundaries I would establish. By the time the elevator doors opened onto the penthouse, my resolve was firm. Alessio stood by the windows as he had that first day, but this time he turned immediately at my entrance. He was impeccably dressed as always, but I noticed the tension in his shoulders, the careful control of his expression. He was uncertain, I realized, perhaps even nervous. The thought that I, a former hotel maid, could make one of the most powerful men in the city nervous was oddly empowering. "Good morning, Elena," he said, his voice carefully neutral. I moved toward him, stopping at a distance that was neither professional nor intimate, a middle ground that reflected the threshold we stood upon. "I've considered your offer," I began. "And?" The single word carried a weight of expectation. I met his gaze directly. "I accept, but with conditions." Relief flashed briefly in his eyes before his composed mask returned. "Name them." "Sofia's safety and future are non-negotiable. She remains untouched by the darker aspects of your world." He nodded without hesitation. "Agreed." "I maintain my own residence, my own independence, at least for now." Another nod, though this one came with a slight tightening of his jaw. "For now. And I need your word that you will never lie to me, even when the truth is difficult or dangerous." "Complete honesty between us, always." At this, he stepped closer. Close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "That is a two-way street, Elena. Are you prepared for such transparency?" I thought of the secrets I still carried. About Gabriel. About the circumstances of my departure from the Philippines. About the feelings that had been growing for Alessio despite all my attempts to suppress them. "Yes," I said firmly. "No significant secrets between us." He reached for my hand, enfolding it in both of his, a gesture of agreement and possession all at once. "Then we have a deal, Elena Santos." The way he said my full name sent a shiver down my spine. "Welcome to the family." As he leaned in to seal our agreement with a kiss, gentle but promising more, I knew I was stepping into a new life, one filled with both promise and peril. I was no longer just Elena the maid, invisible and powerless. I was becoming something new, partner to one of the most dangerous men in the city, protector of my daughter's future, architect of my own destiny. Whatever came next, and I had no illusions that it would be easy or without risk, I would face it with open eyes and the strength I'd always possessed, but never fully embraced. Until Alessio Russo looked at me and saw not just what I was, but what I could become.